Touchdown, Chargers!
What's up, guys? Welcome into a brand new episode of Chargers Weekly. As always, joined by the voice of the Chargers, Matt Money Smith, back in Southern California. I'm sticking around for the Gates enshrinement tomorrow, so still in Ohio. Money, we were both in Canton last night, and heck of a good first impression for these Jim Harbaugh Chargers, 34-7. And listen, you can attribute it to maybe being in camp an extra week, or just maybe having more talent on the back end of the roster, but they look crisp. They look prepared.
Yeah, I think that's part of what this team is and what this coaching staff is all about and preaches. I mean, they started camp a week earlier than the Lions, and they have the same schedule. And I don't think there's any question. That to me, that's the thing that jumps out at you the most, is just how well they played, how prepared they were, time on task. You got the opening kickoff, and Ryan Ficken's bunch scores a turnover. You got one guy punching it out. You got two guys scrapping for it. I think Kendall Williamson punched it out. Caleb Murphy had the ankles, and I think it was Imani that ends up getting the football. And it's like, yeah, that's Charger football right there. First play, no plays off, and it took off from there, man, like a rocket ship. I mean, you want to talk and the great thing, too, Chris, is that guys that we've been seeing performing in camp are the ones that performed in the game.
That's right. That's right. I mean, and we could go down the list, and we will go down the list of so many top performers that we've been talking about on this podcast for the last several weeks. I want to start with the quarterback, though, because, listen, Trey Lance, number 3 overall pick in 2021, and I don't know about you, but I just sensed this confidence, and I think he's had this confidence instilled in him by Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman early. And just, 13-20, 120 yards, 2 touchdowns, a passer rating of 114.6. Led it off with that Will Dissly touchdown to open up the scoring. And we're going to get into KLS and just what he's transferred onto the playing field in a real game. But I just want to start with Trey, because I really like the way that he played. And I remember a year ago throwing 5 interceptions against the Chargers as a Dallas Cowboy. Trey looked the part. And I know this is the first preseason game. It's the Hall of Fame game. And, this is a guy who was a top pick. But I really like what I saw from Trey Lance.
Yeah, I think, you look at, and I'm pulling up I want to see here's my Trey Lance. So last year, I mean, we saw it firsthand against the Chargers. You saw the good and you saw the bad from Trey Lance, right? And the really good was the rushing. He rushed 11 times for 90 yards and a touchdown. He was an absolute menace with his feet in that game. Threw for 323 yards, attempted 49 passes, threw 5 picks, took 3 sacks. And I think yesterday, feels like today because of, how late it was.
One long day, buddy.
That it was just hey, let's manage the mistakes out of the game. Let's take what the defense is going to give you. There were a couple throwaways in there. That passer rating was in the 130s before that third quarter, when he just kind of started managing the game a little bit. Like, okay, yeah, I could try to force this in here. And you think about the 5 interceptions from that game last year, but instead it was just, let's throw it away. Let's dirt it at the feet. Let's live to play another game. We did not even see the run, which was crazy to me. I was excited to see some of this, sort of Greg Roman and what he does and how much he likes these type of quarterbacks that can use their legs and have this type of athleticism. And it just wasn't there. He never, every single one of his, I think he only rushed 3 times, and they were all on scrambles. They were not designed runs. There was one RPO that he pulled it, but he was still looking downfield before he picked up 3 yards. And he showed us stuff that I feel like I didn't see in training camp. I mean, you've been out there with me, Chris. He's been a little inaccurate. We haven't seen the touch throws. Some of those distance throws, have just heck, I saw one bounce into the merch tent, for God's sakes. It was so far offline. And so to see this in the game, and I thought DJ put it perfectly. He's like, you know what? Some guys, like that training camp atmosphere, it just doesn't work for them. It's like kind of the mush, and there's no threat of being hit, and maybe you take it down a notch or two. And so to see Trey come out and perform like that was incredibly, I'm trying to think of the best word to put it. It's not like exciting, or I think it's satisfying because you feel good for the young man because of all the crap he's been through, being a number 1 overall pick or number 3 overall pick and trading 3 first-rounders with Kyle Shanahan, all that disappointment, just the weight of the world being on him for being one of the biggest busts in the history of football. And Harbaugh's just able to push that all aside, say, slap him tap him on the head and do all that. Just go out there and play football, man.
He's 25 years old.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like he's got his best football in front of him. Sam Farmer, I think, asked him a question at the podium. I think Jim in his presser referred to like the fat part of the bat. That's his career right now. Like he's 25. He's got several years in front of him, and maybe this is the place where he can. You come to a situation, Money, where there's no pressure to be the starter. We know that Justin is the starter, and he even said like he didn't realize how much Justin ran the football and just kind of how this system works so well with him. And the one thing that struck me in his presser is just the joy of being in LA and I think being with his coaching staff. I think that he feels comfortable here.
Yeah, look, Hendon Hooker, right, was older than Trey Lance when he was drafted. 2 years later.
That's
older
right.
than Trey Lance.
Tennessee.
When he went, not now, he's still 2 years old, but when he actually was drafted, but that's how young Trey Lance was when he came into the league. And really, got dealt look, I'm never going to say he got dealt a bad hand. He had guaranteed money. So, what do you go to college for? To get a job, to earn a living, to support your family, all that sort of stuff. But just, you're talking about a guy that got to play one game because of COVID the year before he's drafted into the NFL. One game. And then you go to a situation where, we know how particular Kyle Shanahan is with his quarterbacks, how they have to be an extension of him. You have to operate exactly as I tell you to operate. You are an extension. You're not your own person. You're an extension of me. And you're talking about a guy that, at North Dakota State, if I pull up my stuff, the guy that was running like a running back. I mean, while passing as well. I just want to kind of put it in perspective for people, because we're talking about a backup quarterback that I think is in a battle with Taylor Heineke. I don't think Heineke has that thing locked up at all. And let's see, what was it? Here we go. The year he won the D1 championship and was the game MVP, he threw for 2786, 28 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, rushed for 1,100 yards and 14 touchdowns. Like that's the type of player we're talking about. And you look at what Kyle Shanahan passed on Deshaun Watson, Mitch Trubisky, and Patrick Mahomes because he had Brian Hoyer, who he liked as an extension of himself. So much of football is circumstance. What I'm getting at is, by all accounts, every person I've ever talked to that's been around Trey Lance has said he's an exceptional guy. He's a great guy, and they're pulling for him. And I hope whatever this is, whatever this stop on his career path is, I just hope it works out for him, because when you hear the things that you hear about him and the type of person he is, you'd love to see, Jim Harbaugh and his methods of motivation work out.
DJ could break this down much better than I can, but just, the eye test when it comes to these quarterbacks coming out of college, if you don't have a lot of starts under your belt, it's a little bit of an adjustment. It's a little bit of a struggle going into the NFL. That's partly why Justin Herbert was so good from the beginning. It's just all the starts that he had at Oregon. And you look at some of the guys like, Bo Nix, for instance, a lot of starts.
6 years.
6 years from Auburn to Oregon. So for Trey, Taylor Heineke didn't play in this game because he has a lot of tape. He's played in a lot of games. I think that the competition is on now, starting in New Orleans. And we'll see if Taylor gets the start. I would anticipate that Heineke would maybe get the start in that game, and we'll see a lot of Trey Lance, and maybe that's where that backup quarterback position starts. That first drive, too, Amari Hampton, I think he touched the ball 3 times. From a stat perspective, 2 carries, 9 yards. That 8-yard run showed me everything I needed to see, and I'm sure the coaching staff as well. He was out of there after the first series. So, that's all we needed to see from the first round draft pick, Money.
Jump cut, explosion, fought through contact for an extra 4 yards. That's it. Like you said it perfectly, Chris. Everything that he is was on display on that one run, where is able to make the first man miss with a jump cut, explodes forward, breaks a tackle, picks up an extra 4 yards, and we're good. And when you don't have your first string offensive line out there and you have someone as valuable to the organization as Omarion Hampton, I think that's why we're talking about, 3 carries and out. Show us a little something, take a couple whacks, a couple licks from the opposing defense and get the heck out of here and stay healthy. But to expand that, it's fun running back competition, man. We talked about it, Chris, and I know we're going to get to it, but you saw competitors welcome, right? That's the mantra of the Chargers, and I think you saw competitors welcome in that sort of, the way that Kamani Vidal ran, how hard he ran that second touchdown where he carried 2 defenders into the end zone trying to beat him to the corner and couldn't quite get there. You saw it with Naheem Miller-Hines. Look, Naheem's got a legitimate shot to make this team. I think you saw that old Naheem Hines.
Oh, no question.
Out there in that game.
Yeah, especially with Najee's situation up in the air too. We still don't really have a timeline for when we're going to see him on the field. A guy like Kimani, his second training camp, 9 carries, 37 yards, those 2 touchdowns. Miller-Hines, 8 for 34, a long of 9. Haskins, 6 for 34, a long of 11. So yeah, that running game.
Haskins looked great, Chris.
Yeah. And and you've preached this all the time with Haskins. I mean, a special teams guy, a guy who can block. I mean, a Michigan guy, somebody Jim Harbaugh is very familiar with. So, you would think that he's safe. But man, I tell you what, to see this kind of revamped running game and not even talking about one of the big free agent signings this offseason, Najee Harris, it's definitely a positive thing for the Chargers. Up front, really the only projected starter is Zion at center. I know there was a bad snap on that first series.
Yeah.
I mean, is there anything else you can really take from Zion's performance?
Man, I think you saw a couple of those. You had a botched exchange, and then you also had a snap that was a little bit high. And then look, he's just got to work on that. I think the big question is, how much time are they willing to put into it? Is it going to be a full training camp thing, or do they want to get this thing settled and get those 5 to gel and to coalesce? So that's going to be the interesting thing, is if they feel like the fundamentals are at a point where he still needs a lot of work on that front, is he that much better than Bradley with that athleticism, with the way he can pull, with the way he can get to the next level? I think that's the conversation that the front office and that, Coach Dev and Coach Roman and Coach Harbaugh are going to have. Like, what level of commitment do we want to make to this? Because we know how important practice reps are and training camp reps are. If we need to get, Bose can wake up and roll out of bed and do it. So it's not that, but it's like, do we want to have a legitimate competition at center, or do we need to start talking about having a competition at left guard? And now it's Zion versus Sawyer. And that's something that we need to start working through reps. So that's what I think is going to be sort of the more interesting thing, just because, I was talking to somebody about the snaps and they were saying that it's not that big of a deal, that it's just mechanics and muscle memory and everybody does it different. I think we talked about it here before, Chris. And so, but I do think when you see it go live and, and bodies are flying and guys are hitting and we're doing it for real, like those are drive killers and you have to be careful. And so I think that's something that I'm anxious to see in the New Orleans game. If they want to do that, or if they want to throw Andre James out there and give him, because he played quite a few snaps out there as well.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention is just, we've talked so much, and I know the coaching staff has talked so much about the competition squarely between Bose and Zion, but we've also heard how much Sawyer has improved and gotten better from last year. And we know Andre James is another guy who's a veteran who's played a lot of football, a lot of starts with the Raiders. So is that competition suddenly becoming kind of a 4-man competition instead of a 2-man competition? And I feel like Coach even said if Zion doesn't start at center, he's going to cross-train at center, and they're going to make him a potential backup center or somebody who can kind of fill that position in a moment's notice if need be. So, yeah,
I think, Chris, real quick. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think that's something to look for, especially for fans this week, is just kind of how the line looks and the expectation for the New Orleans game across the line, both first and second stringers?
Yeah, and I was just going to say on the snaps, like I think he'll get it figured out. The more important than the snaps is the blocking,
Yes.
And it's not like the defensive coordinators are running stunts and running exotic blitzes or anything like that. But in that portion of it, he played fine. He blocked well, pocket held up, no pressures up the middle, and so I think on that front, he was fine. And so that's kind of where you're like, okay, let's keep this going. And let's just make sure he's working with Coach Hardwick. And we can get that snap thing going, and we'll get that thing fixed.
Yeah, it's a good time to work out the kinks is the first preseason game of the season, right?
You got an extra one.
Have that extra one is key. Before we get to the defense, let's just home in on the pass catchers. Trey Harris just one target in this game, so he didn't accrue a stat line. Rodney Gatson, 1 catch, 7 yards. The guy that everybody's talking about for the last 2 weeks, really. And it seems to be maybe the number one kind of fun storyline among the fans is just the emergence of KeAndre Lambert-Smith. We've seen it. We've talked about him every single week on this podcast. He makes a play in every single practice, and you wanted to see, can he transfer that to a football game? And, 2 catches on 2 targets, a beautiful ball down the sideline from Trey Lance for 28 yards. And then that 3rd and 6, the slant money, the move that he made there for the 15-yard touchdown. Every bit is advertised. That 84 reminds me of Antonio Brown now. Forget Brandon Lloyd.
Yeah, right. It was impressive. It was, and look, it's Ennis Rakestraw that he's doing it against. I think he was a 1. I don't remember if he was their first or their second round pick, but he's doing it against a corner that's expected to be a top starting outside corner, not a depth piece in this league, and that second catch is all you need to look at. It showed you everything. It's putting your foot in the ground. It's dusting your guy on the cut, and then the explosion after the catch where nobody was catching him. It was impressive, man. Just crushing press coverage. If I remember right, I'm pretty sure Rakestraw was right up there on the line of scrimmage with him. Dusts him, gets the quick slant, a beautiful throw from Trey, so he doesn't have to break stride, and then there's 4.37 into the end zone. And it was impressive. And there's another PI in there, by the way, as well, that was a big gainer. The PI that came against him on the opposite side when he was trying to run that slant. It was illegal. It wasn't PI. It was illegal hands to the face as he was breaking in on the other side. So, yes, there's something there. There is definitely something there. And in talking to some people, and how does this guy slide to the 5th when you're coming out of Auburn in the SEC with nearly 1,000 yards, just about 20 yards per reception? Like what happened there? And I think there were some concerns from people based on conversations they had with coaches. And man, you're not seeing that now. He was something, and it's one thing to do it in a preseason game against backups, but we've seen it all training camp. It's just like, yeah, we've seen it in camp, and it's like, oh, well, let's see it in a game. Okay, well, now we've seen it in a game, and now let's just keep stacking it, because that's like, to me, that's when Coach Roman was talking about Trey at the Z, it's like that's the Z. That's the guy you want, off the line of scrimmage a little bit and using that quickness, that shiftiness, and then that breakaway speed if he gets the ball in his hands, man. It was a lot of fun to watch. And again, somebody that I'm happy for that seemed like he had a chip on his shoulder because he slid to the 5th round and thought he was a lot better than that. You talked about the Rose Bowl reception, 88 yards to pay dirt, longest reception in Rose Bowl history, and the stuff he had at Penn State. And maybe there were some feelings about him coming out of there when he decided to go to Auburn, and maybe those planted, some nefarious seeds with some teams, and that's why he ended up sliding to the 5th. But good on Joe Ortiz and his alma mater, ignoring those and going out and plucking them.
If you go to training camp, you mentioned it, just kind of the building blocks and say, okay, well, hey, can you do it a couple of times at training camp? Can you do it in a game? Now, how about doing it with Justin Herbert, right? It's one thing to do it with Trey Lance in the Hall of Fame game, but we talk so much about Justin's rookie year and how he elevated T. Billy and Jalen Guyton and some of the guys on the back end of the roster, I think that this Lambert-Smith-Herbert connection with his speed and Justin's arm and his ability to find guys like that, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but like that's something, and we said it last week, this offense sorely lacked last year. They did not have a downfield threat, 4.37 speed. And having Justin Herbert week one against the Chiefs and having KeAndre Lambert-Smith out there to stretch the field, man, it just brings another dimension. And, it's hard to really assess Trey Harris in the limited time that he played. He only had one target, but that's another guy too who has shown out in camp. And the Chargers are, I don't want to say they're rolling the dice, but there's a bit of an unknown with some of the guys around Ladden, Quentin, because they're rookies. But at every checkpoint, they've raised their hand and they've shown out.
With Trey, I think we've seen it in practice. Like we've seen it.
Yeah.
When I had the chance to talk with him in front of the season ticket holders on Tuesday, sat with him for 10 minutes. He's exceptional young man. Like just you see it on the field, and then when you talk to him, you're like, oh, okay, now he's really got it up there. I mean, he is a sharp dude. So he's got the size, he's got the route running ability, he's got the athleticism, he's got the hands to win the 50-50 balls. He's got it up here, and then you start thinking about how expensive that position is, and you have got Quentin year 3, Ladd year 2, Lambert-Smith, Trey Harris, both year 1. Like that's exciting. That's what you're talking about surrounding your quarterback. And look, I'm not doing this to pat ourselves on the back, but when Mike Williams retired and everyone's like, trade for Terry McLaurin, sign Amari Cooper, it's like, no, they're going to take inventory on what they have first. That's just the way this regime operates. We've seen it enough that they're going to take their inventory and then figure it out. And if they need it, then they'll go get it. And so I think what they're seeing now is, we don't need to be dropping 20, 30 million bucks on a guy because we feel pretty good about Ladd being the one. Q had 8 touchdowns and 800 yards last year. Like, we're good there. If you want to call that a 2 or a 3 or whatever. And now we've got all of this excitement surrounding, these two players and Lambert-Smith and Trey Harris. And like you said, Trey just didn't get the opportunities, but I've seen enough. That what I was getting at, when I talked to him in practice after training camp that day on Tuesday, I was talking about that pass from Justin in the back of the end zone where he threaded it through 2 players, to Trey, and just kind of how that whole thing came about. And he sounded like a 10-year vet. He's like, yeah, Justin, you kind of know generally where he's going to want you, and then you just need to make that effort to get there. And then you also have to, because, these things are bang, bang, man. And you got bodies flying everywhere, and you've got 2 guys in front of you, and he's throwing it between the 2 with laser-like speed. And Trey just sounded like Mike Williams would have said, in the Raider game. How'd you put the 4th down catch? Yeah, just kind of know where Justin wants me to be. Got to make sure I'm kind of right there. And that's kind of what it was, and he's just got that maturity to him. And so very excited about both of those players. And that's not to say take anything away from, you went through it, Chris. It's nobody had more than 2 catches. How about Tucker Fisk, man? Snatching that thing out of the air. That laser out of the air. That was pretty awesome.
We got the 2 guys in the tight ends room who aren't considered pass catch first, making big plays in the Hall of Fame game with Conklin out and Gadsden getting that 1 catch. But buddy, I go back to the conversation that you and I had during free agency when we were going through the DK Metcalfs and T Higgins of the world and trying to figure out if they're going to get Justin this big weapon. And there's I think for good reason some hesitancy around the league to give a wide receiver $30 million plus because it takes up so much of your cap, unless you're the Cincinnati Bengals, right, where you're paying Higgins and Jamar Chase. Yeah. But you're seeing it in Washington right now where Terry McLaurin is the ultimate team guy. He's an awesome player, but even that, they don't want to pay him $33 million a year. That's a lot of money to invest in a wide receiver. Excuse me. So to see how Joe has kind of approached this, Mike Williams was supposed to be kind of the stopgap veteran for a year, but to get Trey Harris, and I don't think anybody really expected KeAndre Lambert-Smith to look like this this early, right? So I think that you're kind of playing with house money with that. But to surround Justin, who's making a lot of money, with Ladd, like you said, his second year, Quinn in his third year, these two rookies, Gadsden, short-term deal with Conklin, Disley's in tow. You have to pay guys like Rashawn Slater and Deion Henley and Derwin James probably down the road. So not having to invest all that money in the wide receiver position, maybe it's a gamble, if you even want to call it that's going to pay off for the Chargers this year if these guys continue to perform like this.
Yeah, I think you put it perfectly in context, right? If I'm Washington, just pay Terry McLaurin. You've got a guy in his second year that's coming off one of the greatest rookie seasons in the history of quarterbacking. And you look at the rest of that room, and you don't want to send him out there in year two with that. Not with the one-score games you had, not with the wild finishes you had in all those games, making a run to the NFC Championship where you absolutely got your doors blown off you. It's a game of chicken now, money between Terry and the front office.
That's
the guy you pay because, look, it works both ways. The Titans did it with A.J. Brown. They're like, no, we don't want to pay you. We think there's a million receivers coming out, and we can find the next A.J. in Treylon Burks. He's already gone. Those draft picks, A.J.'s in the conversation as the best receiver in football. He's top 5 guy. So it works both ways. But in the case of Justin, here's a guy in year 5 or year 6, whatever it is, year 21, 2, 3, 4, year 6. Now we can do that. It's Justin Herbert. He's gonna make KeAndre Lambert-Smith and Trey Harris, as long as they're capable of getting where they need to be. He's going to deliver the ball accurately on time and put them in a position to win. You can get away with it there, especially when you already have a Ladd McConkey who we saw last year. That's the difference. Justin Herbert with a rookie is what it looks like when that rookie's good in Ladd McConkey. That's what it looks like when that's your quarterback. So I think when you have a young quarterback, that's where maybe it makes more sense. Jalen Hurts, let's get him A.J. Brown. Let's get him some of these veterans to surround him with. And Justin Herbert, he's got Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Here we go. We got some vets for him to kind of get things rolling. And so I think that's the difference where you don't need an Amari Cooper. You don't need necessarily that sort of player in order to enhance the offense, because you got a quarterback that, as DJ and Bucky always talk about on Move the Sticks, are you a truck or are you a trailer? Are you pulling it,
trailers,
or is it pulling you? Justin's a truck. He's got to pull everybody else. And so that's where you can save all this money and get yourself a Rashawn Slater extension as the highest paid lineman in the league. Maybe you think about redoing the Derwin deal and get ahead of that and just give him a little bit more, than, I don't know who just got the biggest deal. I can't remember who just got it, but whatever. You get him ahead of, I think Jesse Bates, did he just get like 90-something million bucks? So let's just do that now. And let's keep this financial puzzle as settled as possible so we can, that's what roster construction's all about. You're going to have, if you're going to be a Super Bowl contending team, you're going to have to pay guys. Guys are going to get paid. And then you got to figure out how you're going to supplement with guys that aren't getting paid. So that's what a guy like KeAndre Lambert-Smith and someone like Trey Harris can do for you. And that's a premium position that demands a high wage that you can maybe get away with something.
Good conversation on the offense, Money. Let's switch it to defense. And we mentioned the turnover differential, 5-0, starting with that opening kickoff. But, the DBs, Nikko Reed is another guy who, again,
we've been
very similar to KLS. He pops in camp. He anticipated that ball, a 60-yard interception return, 6 yards shy of a pick six. And you just talked about the competition in the running backs room. How about that DB's room right now? We know about Cam and Tarheeb and how young those guys are, and Dante Jackson and Ben St. Juste, but some of these UDFAs, man, they have been popping all over the screen.
Look, is Kyle Allen an elite quarterback? No, but he's been in the league for 7 years, and he started 13 games in Carolina, and Nikko Reed played him like a fiddle, baited him right into it, watched his eyes the whole way, thought he had a little window on that out, and it's what we've seen in camp. He had a pick six on Herbert. You know, he's a guy that's just, he sees it, he explodes to it. And that's the only reason he was undrafted, probably his size. You know, is he's not a big dude. He's listed at 5'10". So what does that mean? You know, maybe he's a little under 5'10". He's what, I think he's listed 5'10", 180. Is that right? Is that, where do we got Nikko at here? Listed at 5'10", 180. So you know how those measurements go. I don't believe he was at the combine, which is wild to think of right now, right?
Right.
Let's see if
5'10", 180. Yep. 22 years old.
I want to see if here we go. Let me see what his official measurements were, if they have them. No. See, he did not get invited to the combine, but if I'm to go to my notes here and see what did I write down about Reed? Here we go. Second most undrafted free agent guarantee behind Raheem. We talk about, Rocket Sanders, most guarantee of any free agent. Well, guess who got the second most? Nikko Reed. He got $40K. Put that in perspective. Antonio Gates got $2,000. So talking about $40,000 in guarantees. That's the priority that he was. Let's see. The Minter quote, his consistency is the most impressive. The old adage is make a play a day and people will start to know who you are. And then our friend Lance in his bio wrote, punches above his weight as a tackler and run support. What did Jesse Minter tell us? Hey, man, I'm playing zone because I got guys that play zone. I'd love to play man. He's a better press man corner. And I think if that's the case, people are like, okay, you're going to play press man in the NFL at 5'10", 180. That's a tall task. And so that's how someone that was as productive as he was at Oregon, 49 games, 115 tackles, 5 interceptions, 22 passes defensed was his stat line in college. And so that's how you find these gems, and you ain't hiding him on the practice squad. I can tell you that right now. That guy's making the team or he's going to be on another team. That's the reality. After a nationally televised game like that, to put up that type of performance, those PBUs and that pick, that dude's making the team.
But dude, hey, listen, this is a good problem to have. We'll get a Miles Purchase in that pick that he had at the end of the game.
Beautiful.
But Jasir Taylor is having an awesome camp. And Jesse Minter referred to him as one of the most improved players from last year to this year. That's another guy in this cornerbacks room. So this is another position battle, especially going into this New Orleans game over the next 3 weeks. Like, who's going to raise their hand in the games? We've seen the practices, and we've seen Nikko Reed in the practice. We've seen Jasir in the practices. Who's going to do it when the lights are bright? And to see guys like Miles Purchase and Nikko Reed do it, great. How about Tony Jefferson, the preseason god,
playing like a rookie?
He's playing like a rookie. That game against the Cowboys last year was maybe one of the best preseason performances I've ever seen.
Yeah,
I just love that he's out there in a Hall of Fame game making plays.
Yeah, I'm looking at the day. Yeah, it was great to watch, man. And we love Tony. We were chatting with it. I don't know. When we walked through the Hall of Fame, DJ and I were right in front of him, and it was so great to listen to the guys give him the business. They were because him and DJ were talking Padres baseball, and I was like, hey,
of course they were.
Hey guys, this is the Hall of Fame. Let's not talk about a team that hasn't won a World Series and is destined for the wild card round every year. It's just not befitting of the venue. So we were having some fun with that. And then one of the guys from the back is like, yo, TJ, come here, man. They got your uniform from high school over here. It was like the 1920s, leather helmet. And here's the guy suited up, starting the Hall of Fame game like a freaking missile, blowing up a play at the line of scrimmage. It's awesome. It's competitors welcome, right? But to go back to your
By the way, yeah. Fourth quarter, how much Padres trade deadline talk in Dodgers trade deadline? No.
Tells you how much fun we were having, man. How much fun we were having with that game. It was a blast. I said it at the end of the broadcast. I said, look, I get to do these games with a guy I've known for 15 years, one of my best friends. It's such a great time in the booth. Love Shannon. She's part of the family down on the field. Yep. We have a great time together. It's a great crew. And I think a lot of people would roll their eyes and be like, God, we got a fourth preseason game. What a nightmare. We had to fly to Canton And man, it was just good vibes all around. And I felt like that was the case with the team. Competitors welcome. Let's compete, man. Let's go out there, compete in this game. And I think you saw a difference between a team that was probably like, we don't want to be here. We had a best record in football last year. We get routed in the freaking divisional round. Now we got to go play the Hall of Fame game. How sloppy they were, just the mistakes, the penalties, the interceptions, the fumbles, the turn from the Lions. You could see the difference in those two teams. I'm not saying it's going to carry through the season, but I think just for that game, you saw a mindset and you saw a focus and you saw what's the task at hand? Let's go execute it to the best of our abilities. And I think for us, look, not comparing myself to the football players out there, but we took it on as the same. I put a ton of time into prepping for that game and having as many stories as I could in case it looked like a typical Hall of Fame game and it was 0-0 in the third quarter with 7 turnovers. And instead, man, we got competitors welcome, and we got Nikko Reed, and we got Caleb Murphy playing with his hair on fire from that edge position, and we got so much out of it that it was a reminder of competitors welcome.
KeAndre, I got to catch up with KeAndre on the field after the game, and I asked him about I said, what did the coaches say to you guys about this game that had you like so ready to play? And KeAndre said, just A, let your training do the talking, and B, coach said, like, this game is going to get higher ratings than an NBA Finals game or a World Series game. So no pressure, but a little pressure, right? Yeah. And they played like it, man. And, I kind of went into this, when you have a 4th preseason game, it can get ugly in a hurry.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I think the last couple of weeks, we've gotten in the weeds with so many fun things with this team. There were storylines every quarter. There was, it was the rookies. It was Zion at center. It was Trey Lance, the 3rd overall
redemption
pick.
Tour, yeah.
Yeah, it was a redemption tour. Gates is is going into the Hall of Fame on Saturday. And I think that was another thing too. Just even talking to some of these young guys like Jasir, they know what Antonio Gates means to this organization. And I think that there was a sense of pride going out there to say, hey, this is Gates' weekend. This means a lot to the organization. And they played like it.
Yeah, no doubt. And I just, it's the mantra, it's the mindset. It's exactly what this team is all about. And there's one thing that you can count on, and that is that Jim Harbaugh is not, he's not going to mince words, and he's going to tell you what it is. And when he says we're an offensive line team, tip of the spear, what position group has every other position group depend on them, but they don't depend on anybody else? Offensive line. And they go out and they draft Joe Alt and not Malik Neighbors and not one of those exceptional wide receivers. They take the tackle. And then what does he say? Competitors welcome. And he's got a group of guys that are going out there like it is the NBA Finals, like it is the World Series, on the opening kickoff, attacking and creating a turnover. And you've got Will Dissly out there, a guy who's a 7-8 year vet that's got to block his tail off and catch passes and all the stuff that's put on him. And he's out there to help Trey Lance to make sure that, with that opening series, that he can get this thing to look as right as possible with Trey, with the second team offensive line and a first team tight end. And look what it has. I didn't see Trey Lance feather a pass like that all training camp long. Like those touch passes have just not been there. So, and what does he do? He sets the tone, and Trey has himself a day, man. And so I think it's just a reminder of how special this coaching staff is, to have Shane Day back. Herbert absolutely loved him. They sent him packing, at one point, and now he's back, and Herbert's happy, and you see Trey Lance, and look, I know it was a very limited sample, but, we saw a little miscommunication on that left sideline out. DJ thought it was an out, but I don't remember who the receiver was. It might have been Campbell that cut it as an in. But outside of that, man, DJ had 2 beautiful passes. I mean, he threw a freaking laser on that second pass. And there's a guy that's in the same boat as Trey, the number 1 recruit in the nation, that goes to Clemson, plays his tail off in his first 2 games, against Boston College, 18-point deficit, comeback win, and then trades punches with Notre Dame at Notre Dame for 4 quarters in an overtime period, and then it just kind of unravels on him a little bit, and it's like, come on over here, DJ. We're gonna build you back up. You were a man amongst boys in high school, and you got off to that great start at Clemson and had a solid year at Oregon State. And we're gonna find it for you, and I think that's what this. And Nyheim Hines, you've been out of football for 2 years. Come on, man. You want Miller on the back because no one ever asked you what you wanted the back of your jersey to say? Whatever, dude. Let's do it. Print it on the back, man. Put your mom's name on there, and let's go. And you saw, Nyheim Hines, who's in his 6th season, playing like he's a rookie, fighting for his job like Tony Jefferson was last year. There is a culture to this team that in the era of fantasy football, everybody's collecting stats and draft status, and that's how they're judging wins and losses. And culture gets overlooked. And you've got to have an identity, and you have to have a culture, and you have to have coaches, And I think that's what you see. That's the difference in this team, is it starts at the top with the Spanos family hiring Jim Harbaugh and then stepping back and saying, hey, man, it's yours. What do you need? Oh, I need a big pot of cash because I'm going to go sign some assistants that you're going to pay, and you're going to pay them a chunk of money. And, okay, how much we got to pay your strength and coordinating, your head of strength and coordinating? The most in the NFL. Okay, here it is. How much are we going to pay your defensive coordinator? Millions. Okay, here it is. And so that's what's been established. It's more than draft picks and free agent signings. It's the fact that they've built this out with Coach Elston and Coach Klink and Coach Dev and Coach Hardwick and Coach Minter and Coach Roman and Coach Ficken, keeping him around when the vultures were circling to pluck him out of this place as soon as Staley was let go. And they're like, no, that guy's staying. And so is Coach Gold. You're not going to let him take a special teams coordinator job. You're going to pay him a premium. That's what we're seeing, Chris.
Yeah. And, Coach Herb, what you're seeing on the field, especially from these guys in their second year that work with Coach Herb from their rookie year to their second year, or Jasir Taylor told me last year when he had those injuries, just he had never gone through that before, and a week after the season got with Coach Herb, and that's why he feels the way he does, and he's playing the way he is. That guy means such a great deal to this organization and to the players on this team. Money, I want to shift to the Hall of Fame before we get out of here. And I'm going to be here all weekend.
I want to before Chris, I do want to just get in because we only really touched on the corners. I'll just kind of run through it, just sort of my notes from.
Yeah.
He's done it.
The first 2 levels of the defense. What'd you see?
He's done it again. Mike Elston and Jesse Minter have done it again. The push, and I know they're backup offensive line and stuff, but the Lions are an offensive line team just like the Chargers are. That's the culture that they create. They are going to be a physical, beat-you-up, offensive line-centric team. And, man, that defensive line, and they had them all out there, man. Tito's out there. Jones is out there. Hand is out there. And Jamari Caldwell, dude, they were pushing those guys off the ball like they were freaking folding chairs. And it was like, it goes back to the coaching. And so I think of all the groups, I know the corners are going to get a lot of the attention. Miles Purchase with that incredible interception.
Yeah.
The secondary is going to get all that attention. Mickens had a great form tackle. It was the most beautiful tackle of the entire game, late in that game, head up, open space, going against an athlete, wrapped up, drops him for minimal gain. Like, there's a lot to take away from that defense that played their tails off. I mean, my God, 4 turnovers, right? One of them on special teams. But you're seeing it. I think if there was one, if just to make sure we're being fair and even, I think if there was one concern, I think you're seeing Junior still trying to catch up. I think he's still, kept kind of getting sucked in and kept being a little bit late to things. And so I think that's just continue to get him those reps so he can get up to speed. But, man, that defensive front was special now. It was special.
And Muddy, there's so much deeper this year. There was a lot to be made about Puna Ford going to the Rams, but they replaced him with like 2 or 3 guys, and to draft Caldwell too. That late addition of T.R. Tart late in training camp a year ago, and what he proved to be. You bring in Hand, you bring in Jones. I mean, it's a group that it's another competition where I don't know how you're going to be able to keep all these guys. And to your point about, a guy like Nikko Reed, like if you let one of those guys go, he's not going to be on the practice squad.
No.
He's going to be on a 53-man roster. So
Yeah.
the defense and Jesse Mintz are a lot of like tough decisions to make over the next couple of weeks, and that's we always look for a silver lining in preseason because sometimes these games get a little rough in the second half, but because of the talent and what we've seen on the back half of the roster, these second halves are interesting. I mean, they're good because if you flash in the fourth quarter, chances are you could make the 53 or you could be a practice squad candidate immediately. So I applaud Joe Ortiz. I think that's where it starts too. As you mentioned all the coaches, but Joe's going into his 28th year in the NFL, has worked with Ozzie Newsome, a Hall of Famer, comes from the Baltimore Ravens. I don't think it can be understated what Joe has done, both from a free agent perspective and the draft, finding these guys. I said this on Monday, like you find 2 starting corners in the 5th round last year. If KLS and Gadsden pop, I joke. I said Joe should be in Canton.
Right.
You bring in these impact players late in the draft. Money like the entire draft class last year. You mentioned Colson, and you hope that Colson can kind of get it together throughout the rest of the preseason. But him and Aboigbe, if those guys hit, I mean, it's a home run class from last year.
Yeah. I think, and I will say, like, the edges, I think, needed some help too. We've kind of been looking at Kyle Kennard and haven't seen a whole lot.
Kennard left the game for a little bit and came back.
Yeah. So, I don't know if there's something going on with him, but I think that's one. Tremont Morris-Brash, some great, some not great. Had, the hit had probably the hit of the game. I want to say it was a tight end that he must have thrown 10 yards before making that tackle for loss in the backfield. But I think the edges is where, Caleb Murphy played his tail off, led to that one sack from T-Rod Edwards, where he did a nice swim and spin. But yeah, the edges, I think you're still looking at, but you're talking about Thule, Bud, and Khalil that are going to get the majority of that. So you're really talking about the 4th edge. For me, it was just the fact that all those interior linemen played, and you can just see it. And I think for people that because those aren't things that you're going to find in the box. And if you go to Pro Football Focus, like I hate, to me, that's just the great thing is just that. Anyway, I love what they do, but that whole part of it, it's like you don't know what the assignments are. You don't know what they're supposed to be doing on that play. And if you just watch the game, you could see that push and you could see just how much the bullies. And by the way, just look at them. Just look at that group of guys. And we kept making the joke. I was like, you got, where's he at? Let me see. Naquan Jones out there, 6'3", 313, and 313. That dude's 333 if he's 5 pounds, and just Deshaun Hand is giant. Caldwell's 340 pounds, giant.
They are massive.
They are massive, and they are people movers, man. And they were moving people in that game. So, yeah, defense, tip of the cap, Mike Elston, the job that he does to Clink and those corners. What an interception by Miles Purchase. It gave me an opportunity to put in my purchase more ham and bacon, little note that I had in there that everybody got a kick out of from Iowa State when those 4 guys were together. And yeah, it was a great night. So just wanted to get all that in there, make sure we and the safeties. You saw some of those plays from Bridges and from Mickens and those guys, up top as well. Just all levels of the defense playing some really good ball.
Yeah, I think if I had to distill it down to kind of one overarching takeaway, it's a very, very deep roster.
Yes.
It is a deep, deep roster, and it's evident from the first Hall of Fame game. I mean, when you have that much talent kind of popping in all 4 quarters, you have a deep team, you have competition at a lot of position groups, and we're going to see that play out starting next Sunday against the Saints. But yeah, before we got out of here, Money, the reason why I'm still here, Antonio Gates getting inducted into the Hall of Fame tomorrow, and I got a chance to sit down with Antonio yesterday, and it really is maybe one of the more improbable roads to Canton ever. I mean, it's like this guy played college basketball 30 miles up the road from Canton at Kent State, went to the Elite Eight his junior year, averaged like 20 points his senior year. He thought he was going to the NBA. He had no interest in playing football. So I think it was like 235 days between his last points in college basketball to his first career NFL touchdown. I think he was wearing the number 43 in camp. I think Sam Farmer said it was a $7,000 contract. You said it was $2,000. So whatever it is, it's not.
Yeah.
It wasn't a lot. It was less than $10,000.
Whatever it was, I may have that wrong. I thought the notes they gave me was 2, but I could be wrong.
No, it was hardly anything. And to see this guy go to Canton, 116 touchdowns, all of them from Rivers and Breeze, with the exception of 2 from Flutie and 2 from LT. You got to call his record breaker against the Miami Dolphins in 2017, week 2, in that home opener.
Yeah.
And, you got to call his last touchdown against the New England
awesome.
Patriots in the divisional round, man. Just an unbelievable career, and I don't think it's one that will ever be duplicated. A guy who never played college football with a gold jacket.
Yeah, not a single snap. And look, it's the paths are the paths, and you can call it whatever you want, fate, destiny. We make our own fate, we make our own, however you want to describe it. But remember, that's not how it started. It started with a guy that was an exceptional high school football player, an exceptional high school basketball player, and 2 of arguably the greatest coaches in the history of college football and basketball recognized it. And he was at Michigan State to play for Tom Izzo and to play for Nick Saban. And the 2 of them had an agreement that he could play both until he gets nicked up. And Saban's like, you're not playing football anymore, or you're not playing basketball anymore. And Gates was like, that's not the deal. I am playing basketball. And if you don't want me to be on the football team unless I quit basketball, ain't happening. And then he's got to go to a community college, and then he goes to Kent State. And at Kent State, what's his dream is to play NBA basketball. He does it on the biggest stage, is the best player on a team that makes a Cinderella run and knocks off Okie State as a 10 seed, and then proceeds to knock off Alabama as a 2 seed, knocks off Pitt as a 3 seed to get to the Elite 8, and he's their best player. And yet nobody comes knocking on the door, not even with a second-round pick or an offer, and he's got to be like, all right, well, I guess I'll try the football thing. And it is not, you said it, Chris, it's the most unlikely road to Canton ever, and a guy that changed the position forever, that solidified the idea. Look, Tony Gonzalez was playing basketball at Cal. Julius Peppers was playing basketball at North Carolina. There's guys that have done it, but not just basketball. There's a guy, I think I told the story, there's a guy at Alabama. I called a bunch of Alabama games this year as the number 1 team in the nation with Robert Ory. And he was telling me that there were football scouts there to watch him. I wish I could remember his name, but that's another guy that has not played. And that's the Antonio Gates factor. As you look out there and you're like, man, look at that body. Look at that wiggle. And, when we talked to Nick Hardwick, who obviously was his teammate, and he told a great story. He goes, and this is going to push forward to Phillip in his Hall of Fame path. He's like, I don't know. We used to joke about it. We're like, somehow Phillip has made a deal with someone to get more hours in the day. He's like, because I would wake up for coffee every single day, and Phillip and I would get together every day and go through film and go through calls and go through looks that we were going to see for hours. And then I would see him go into the wide receiver room for hours. And then he would sit with Gatesy, and he and Gates would talk for hours. He said, and that's what this was. It was just time on task, where you have this ability, this muscle memory, this conditioning to just do it. And you just do it. And it happens because you don't have to think about it once you're out there. And he and Rivers, and when you start going through it, and I don't need to get too deep into it because people just look it up. It's just numbers. But when you go through red zone touchdowns, third down touchdowns, fourth down touchdowns, third down conversions for first downs, like there's no one even close to him. Nobody even close, single season or career. And he was a special, special player.
He said that, because he never really had this dream, when he kept racking up the stats and they're like, hey, Gates, you're about to pass Lance Allworth, or you're about to pass this person, you're about to pass this person. It didn't really register to him the magnitude of what he was actually doing. He said, like, even in his 7th year, he said, I approached it like with the fear of being cut, even though I was an all-pro, just like having to prove it over and over again. And to your point about Rivers, he said the IQ of Rivers kind of married with his raw ability was just magic. It was just magical. And to have a 16-year career with Breeze and Rivers as your primary quarterbacks, man, like what a benefit, because those guys could be wearing gold jackets as early as next year. So I just, it was fun listening because, Sam has so many nuggets. He said that Gates he ran a 4.840. And so there were scouts in the building, like, what are we doing with this guy? Like, is he a defensive tackle? Is he a tight end? Like, and Jared Allen kind of poked fun of him at the press conference because, I think he said, hey, Nick Saban said I could have been a defensive end, a defensive tackle. And he goes, well, that's why Nick Saban got fired, because could you imagine if you're a defensive end or defensive tackle, you wouldn't be in Canton, man.
That's great. That's so great.
So I'm you know what? I'm looking forward to this weekend because it's going to bring back so many old Chargers, and there's going to be so many memories. And it's one of my favorite. It's like one of the favorite tentpole events for me, because the speeches, you're always going to glean something from them. And like I said, we're going to be, if you guys want to follow along our Sports Central LA account, we're going to be at the Gold Jacket dinner today, and then the enshrinement tomorrow. And our hope is to talk to as many former Chargers as possible, not only about Gates and the speech and everything, but also kind of their thoughts on this version of the Chargers too. I always love kind of hearing the perspective of older players about the new team. So hope to see Rivers and Breeze out here. It should be a fun weekend.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it was fun for us. And just, I think as I kind of went through, I know it's going to be kind of weird, but it was so much fun to go to the Hall of Fame. And like, I just, there's Lance
that's
and,
awesome.
Just all of them. And I will say this, look at Ron Mix, look at that hair. Like if you have hair, it's, here's Sid Gilman. And like the busts are just incredible.
Do you have Fouts? I think Fouts has the best bust. It looks exactly like him.
Yeah, I mean, here's Kellen. I just kind of was snapping photos of all the guys. There's Charlie Joyner right there. Like, it's just, the busts are awesome. Look at Juniors, man. Juniors is one of the best. Yeah. That is one of the absolute best. There's Ladanians. But like the best one, I thought, like Walter Jones is the head of Walter Jones is like the head of the freaking earth. It's the most massive head. And then I was like, God, look at the size of his head. And then you turn around and there's Jonathan Ogden, and you're like, oh my God, that's Jupiter. It's just like this massive head. It's just, it's a really cool experience that if you're a football fan.
What was it like? What was it like being there and seeing the current Chargers players taking it all in?
Yeah, it was the best. Like Derwin was yelling, screaming for Brennan Rice. Like, where Brennan? Come on, man, get a look at your old man's helmet. Like, it's just like cool moments like that, or giving Tony Jefferson the business about it being his uniform from 1926, and just seeing them all. And then I'll tell you, the one place that I did see the most Chargers was the display of Super Bowl rings. And they were all kind of looking at those Super Bowl rings and thinking about, what theirs would look like. So they made this stop in the most important spot for sure, as far as current fans are considered. But yeah, it was not, hey, just get me through this and get me out of here. No, they were all taking their time and paying attention to stuff and finding their favorite players and their busts. I think I saw Derwin stop at Polamalu and was talking about how that might be the best bust, and the hair and all that. So it was a special experience. And I'll tell you, man, based on the way they played, the Chiefs said they want to play on Christmas Day every year. The league may be like, hey, Jim, you guys are playing in the Hall of Fame game every year. You're our guys. You certainly took the approach that is unlike the approach of just about any other team we've ever invited here, and how much you embraced it. And I would recommend, I don't know if it's available. I don't know how you would find it, but man, Harbaugh told the best story when we interviewed him. And I know he knew it was a good one because it carried over to the NBC interview, because Mike Tirico was like, oh, he told us that story today. I was like, yeah, we got that out of him last night. We asked him what his favorite Hall of Fame memory was. And he talked about being 5 or 6 and going with John and Joni with his parents. And he said the thing I remember most about it was my dad bought this little facade, this replica of the Hall of Fame, of the facade of the Hall of Fame. And he's like, it was on our mantle forever. Like it was like a family sort of like, an heirloom or something that you would put on the mantle. He said, and then come to find out that when Grandma Harbaugh would watch us and we'd get a little too rambunctious, a little too rowdy, the spire came off and it was full of booze. And Grandma was sucking down the booze in there. He goes, I don't know what it was filled with, but come to find out that thing was full of liquor, and Grandma used to hit it. And he got so excited. He then Josh Ruprecht, the VP of PR, was there, and he's like, Josh, can you find me one of those? And Josh goes to work, and he's like, got it. Found it on Etsy, and he's like, how much? And he's like, $70. He goes, buy it. I'll give you. And he goes, oh, I found a second one on eBay. It's only $25. He's like, buy them both. Here's $100. So Harbaugh is going to get his Hall of Fame, the entrance to the Hall of Fame replica that was at one point, and then we came to find out it was full of Jim Beam whiskey, is what Grandma Harbaugh was sucking on.
That was Grandma Harbaugh's
and that's the thing about Harbaugh. Huh? Yeah, he's got a million of those stories, and it was so great. And he just had the biggest smile on his face. He's like, I remember that, man. I wonder if they still sell it. And he's such a fun guy to be around, especially when you're putting football into a historical perspective.
All right, the Grandma Harbaugh story, a good way to end this podcast, I think. Guys, thank you for listening along. We went over an hour on this. So the Hall of Fame game wasn't that boring, was it?
No, we made it work. We made it work, Chris. Have a great time out there this weekend, man. Enjoy it. I'm looking forward to all the coverage you guys are going to be doing over there on CBS.
I appreciate it, brother. And I'll see you next week. We'll get you guys ready for, I guess, week 2 or I don't. Week 0 was this week, I guess. Yeah. So week 1 of the official NFL preseason next week against the Saints on Sunday. We'll get you ready for that next week. For Money, I'm Chris. This has been Chargers Weekly.